Today, we're heading deep into the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary in southern India. Now, this is a place of absolutely incredible biodiversity, where people and wildlife literally live side by side. But that closeness, well, it's creating some serious friction. So much so that it's now been officially declared a state-specific disaster. So what happens when expert plans, the ones made in offices, collide with generations of lived experience on the ground? Let's dive in.
And this quote from John Keats, it's the perfect way to frame this whole story. Because what we're really looking at here are two totally different realities. The reality that's written down in policy documents, and the reality that's lived day in and day out by the indigenous communities who call this forest home.
Okay, let's start with a number that just kind of says it all. 340%. That's the mind-boggling jump in compensation claims for wildlife damage. We're talking lost crops, livestock, you name it, just between 2010 and 2024. I mean, this isn't just a small issue. It's a full-blown crisis, and it's getting worse.
To really get what's going on, you have to picture this place, the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. It's a major biodiversity hotspot. But for the Kattunayakan, Paniyan, and other indigenous communities there, the forest isn't just some pretty scenery. It's everything. Their livelihood, their culture, their home. Their lives are completely interwoven with the very same wildlife that's now at the heart of this conflict.
And the human cost here, it's just devastating. We're talking about 19 people killed in just over a decade, and most of those were from tribal communities. 77 injuries, the constant grinding loss of crops and livestock that people depend on to survive. But beyond those numbers, there's this invisible toll, losing access to the forest for basic things like firewood, and maybe worst of all, just the constant draining loss of peace of mind.
So obviously, with things getting this bad, the government had to step in. And they did, with a very detailed, expert-driven strategy to try and fix the problem. And honestly, on paper, it looks pretty solid. It seems comprehensive, well thought out.
And to understand this official plan, we have to get this one key idea, the etic perspective. Just think of it as the view from the outside, right? The 30,000-foot view. It's based on scientific data, big conservation principles, all the analysis that experts and policymakers do from a distance.
And this is the kind of thing that ethic perspective produces. A big, multi-pronged strategy. You can see it here. Building physical barriers, improving the forest habitat, providing compensation. I mean, it seems to cover all the bases, doesn't it? A logical, top-down solution.
But now, we're going to flip the script completely. We're leaving the official reports behind and heading to the front lines. It's time to let the experience of the people who actually live there do the talking. And believe me, what they have to say, it changes everything.
So, the total opposite of that etic perspective is the emic perspective. This is the view from within. This isn't about abstract data points. It's about traditional ecological knowledge that's been passed down for generations. It's the kind of wisdom you only get from living in and with the forest your entire life. So here's our first huge disconnect. The official policy, it bans forest fires. And to an outsider, that makes total sense, right? Fire, bad for forests. But the communities, they say, whoa, hold on. Controlled fires are absolutely essential. They argue these small, managed fires clear out all the invasive plants, they help nutrient-rich grasses grow for the animals to eat, and they improve visibility, which makes the forest safer for everyone.
And listen to this, directly from the Kattunayakan and Mullu Kuruman communities. They say the lack of fire has actually allowed invasive species to take over, which is depleting the animal's habitat. So get this, the very policy meant to protect the forest is, in their eyes, a key reason it's being destroyed, pushing wildlife right into their villages.
Okay, here's another one that is completely counterintuitive. The official logic is pretty simple. If you farm next to a forest, animals are going to come and raid your crops. Makes sense. But the community sees the exact opposite happening. They argue that when people stop farming that land near the forest, it goes wild. And it basically turns into a brand new buffet zone that attracts wildlife, bringing them even closer to their homes.
And this quote from the Mullu Kuruman community just nails their logic. An abandoned field is like an open invitation. The animals are smart, they set up a new territory right on the community's doorstep. So the key takeaway here is, it's not the presence of cultivation that's the problem, it's the absence of it. Now, for the most sensitive topic of all, hunting. The official view is a strict, no-exceptions ban. You have to protect the wildlife. But the Mullu Kuruman community remembers it differently. They used to practice what they call sustainable hunting, where they would specifically target animals like wild boar and porcupine, the ones that cause the most damage to their crops. For them, it wasn't a sport. It was a way of managing the ecosystem so that they could survive too.
And all this leads us to another really fascinating insight from the research. Turns out there's a huge disconnect between the animals that get all the media attention and the ones that are actually causing the most trouble day to day.
So, I'll ask you, in a forest that's famous for elephants and tigers, who do you think are the real troublemakers for the local farmers? The answer? Well, it's probably not what you think.
So here's the reality on the ground. Of course, elephants and tigers are incredibly dangerous, and they capture all the headlines. But the research found that the most persistent daily threat to people's livelihoods and crops, it actually comes from wild boar and monkeys. In almost every area they studied, these were the species causing the most widespread damage, day in and day out.
So, here we are. We've got these two clashing worldviews, the top-down, eidetic plan from the experts, and the bottom-up, emic experience from the community. The path forward has to be somewhere in the middle, right? There has to be a way to bring these two kinds of knowledge together.
I mean, the research just showed over and over again how even the best-intentioned solutions can totally backfire without local input. Take the elephant-proof trenches. Sounds like a great idea, but they were often dug in soil that would just collapse during the monsoon season. Or worse, in some places, they actually drained water away from people's rice paddies, turning those fields into perfect grazing land for wildlife and making the conflict even worse.
So the answer has to be a whole new model. And that means truly respecting and integrating local knowledge, not just, ticking a box. It means we have to create tiny micro-level plans for each community instead of these massive one-size-fits-all solutions. And most importantly, it means blending the very best of modern science with the deep wisdom of traditional knowledge.
Ultimately, what this all points to is that the goal itself has to change. We have to get past this idea of just managing conflict, which kind of treats people and wildlife like they're two opposing armies, and start working towards enabling real, genuine, sustainable coexistence.
And that leaves us with a really big final question. Yeah, this story is from Wayanad, and it's about human-wildlife conflict. But the lesson here is universal. As we try to solve our biggest, most complicated challenges, you have to ask, whose experience, whose deep, on-the-ground knowledge are we still ignoring?